Hello, and welcome to another episode of Coach and Coffee. Go grab your coffee, come have a seat. We are going to talk about running cadence today. Instead of going over why you should do it necessarily, I'm going to talk about more of my experience with it, and hopefully you'll glean some knowledge from that, maybe be able to make a decision on what you want to do based on it. Essentially, running cadence is how many steps you're taking per minute. Some people count this on one leg and then just double whatever the count is. So let's say you were running and after 1 minute you had 60 steps on your left leg that you counted. 120 would be your cadence, 60 times 2 because you have 2 legs, just doubling that number. Or some people will count it on both legs. It's easier to count on one though, just because if you're going at a faster pace, it's hard to keep counting every single step. Another way you can count cadence is with the metronome. There are lots of free metronome apps out there for Apple and Android. So just grab one of those and set it to whatever cadence you need it to be at. Anyway, that's what cadence is. Cadence is important for running form and efficiency, running economy, you might say. My experience with it, when I first started running for obstacle course races, I didn't really run much before then as far as distance goes. Just playing sports and pickup games and stuff was most of the running I did. So when I first started doing obstacle course racing, I wanted to get way better at it. So I started running more because a large portion of the race was running, and I sucked at it because I never did it. Just the case with everything you never do. So when I first started running, I was trying to increase my times and distances every single workout. So I was trying to run fast every time, no matter how much, how far I was running or for how long, or I was just trying to beat my old time every time. What happened with that was a lot of overstriding and running at a low cadence but with long stride lengths. So maybe my cadence was in the 160s, but I was doing like 7-minute miles, 7 20-minute miles, going as often as hard as I could. And the problem with that was when you're taking long strides like that and not many of them in a minute, every time you reach out and plant that leg out in front of you, one, you're putting on the brakes. It's an eccentric load on your hamstrings, and it takes a lot more energy to then follow through and repeat that motion at the same speed. But two, with your leg that far out in front of you, it takes significantly more stabilization to hold proper form and not end up with like knees caving in, foot caving in, hips buckling, all that stuff. So it's much more efficient to run at a higher cadence because the time spent on a single leg and the amount of force put on your joints in different directions and the amount of stabilizing they have to do is much less. So if instead I was running at a cadence of 180, which is roughly where consensus says is pretty efficient running form for most people, might be slightly higher, might be slightly lower, but that's pretty much the consensus on it with all the research done on it. Had I been doing that, taking more steps per minute and less long strides, I would have done better, and I wouldn't end up with a IT band injury like 7 months after I started running or whatever it was. Anyway, after the IT issue came up, I realized, well, my running form isn't great. Cool, I'm hitting new PRs, but this isn't going to last very long if I'm already jacking my body up. So I started working on cadence and running form and efficiency and everything. The easiest thing I could do starting out after looking into it a little bit more was increasing my cadence. So I started using a metronome. The watch I was using would tell me my cadence after the fact. It's not always exact, but it's very, very close. As long as I'm not holding something in my hand, like sometimes I'd hold my phone in my hand that my watch is in and it'll throw the cadence off because it's heavier and it just doesn't register the movements properly. But it was very close. It was off by maybe 1 or 2 steps per minute. So I saw my average was in like the high 160s, but I wanted it to be higher than that, to be more efficient, more ideal, everything. So I started using a metronome app, running with the metronome playing with the phone. You can get music that's set, that has beats at certain cadences, certain number of beats per minute, so that you can just run to the beat essentially. I'm not really interested in that because it means I have to listen to music I don't want to listen to essentially, and I don't mind listening to a metronome. I actually like the idea of having to focus on taking a step every time there's a beat. Anyway, I started using the metronome, cranked up the beats into the 170s and started doing that. It was very hard at first. My body didn't want to move that way because it never moved that way before. It was kind of a change up of overall form, and I had already run several hundred miles on a certain way before. So it was challenging. It was slightly mentally frustrating at first, but it was extremely helpful and has been extremely helpful in the long term. Every once in a while, my overall cadence is up as long as I'm running on flat things. If you're going up mountains, don't even worry about your cadence. You're not going to be able to sprint up a mountain and keep that fast cadence. So if you're doing a lot of mountain running, your cadence may not be a very good measurement of how efficiently you're running. But if you're running on flat paved surfaces, tracks, trails, things like that, on all of those my cadence is up. It's usually in the mid 170s when I do those things, and that's been very good for me. I've tried going up to 180, and actually on pavement 180 feels really good. On trails it feels weird still. I don't know, I'll work on that. But my running's become much more efficient. I haven't had any injuries since I've improved my running form and efficiency, running economy again. It's been very helpful overall. A lot of people when they first start running are running at a very low cadence, taking really long strides, especially if they're trying to set new PRs and things like that. They end up injured a lot, which is very discouraging, and a lot of people stop running because they get injured. For those who keep going, they don't know that they need to fix something. Maybe they just thought they had weak muscles or weak joints, and that could be the case. You may need to strengthen some things, but increasing your cadence will be extremely helpful. So even now, I will go out and do short runs every once in a while at a high cadence just to make sure that I'm still doing it. My watch will tell me after runs without a metronome playing, but I still want to make sure that I'm getting that practice in so I maintain a really good efficiency and high cadence. For me, it's been extremely beneficial. Everyone I've worked with that I've had go through that process, especially new runners or newer runners, it's been very beneficial for them. I've not ever heard of anyone who it hasn't been beneficial for. So it's something to strongly consider, and it's very easy to get started with. I would recommend if you're new to running and if you've never done cadence training before, don't just suddenly crank up the beats to 180. Probably won't go well. You'll probably feel like you're sprinting and you won't be able to do it for long. Gradually increase it. Do shorter runs instead of longer runs, and just do them pretty frequently. So if you maybe did 3 runs a week that were a little bit longer, maybe run 5 days a week and cut the distance or time of those runs down, and just increase the cadence gradually over time so your body can adapt and change and make progress. It'll be less frustrating that way. You'll make progress faster that way, and the end goal of more efficient running, more injury-free running, faster running overall, all of that will be reached much sooner, and that's what we want. We want progress. If you have questions on anything that I've mentioned here today, just comment below or shoot us an email at info@triofitlife.com. We've gotten a lot of great inquiries from these videos and some of the articles that we do at triofitnessocr.com/blog. There's tons of articles in there. We haven't done one on cadence yet. We may, this video's coming out on it, so maybe we won't need to, but you know, redundancy is good. And it's a little bit rainy today, but it's been nice. It's nice and cool because last week it was like in the mid 80s and extremely high humidity, and just sitting out here I was just sweating a ton. So this is much nicer to have coffee on a cool day with a little bit of rain dropping down. We will see you next time on Coach and Coffee.